episode 430 of your favorite podcast. I'm not clairvoyant, I just know good podcasts. And I know that this is it. If you're listening, this is your favorite, and it's okay. Say, what's your favorite podcast? This is Whole Life, Whole Life Church in Orlando, Florida, where every week we discuss and go further into the message that whoever it may be. And this week, as to my right, it was Ken who had the message, which, I don't know, you preach, what, 80% of the time? 85, probably? I don't know.
Yeah, I would
Something
say
like
that. I think out of 52 weeks, I think I'm preaching about 38 of them.
Ooh, shoot, math before 9 a.m. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Lucas, how about you? Are you a math person? Can you confirm or deny 80 plus?
I think so.
Yes.
I think that's about right.
It's in that 70 to 80% range, right?
Oh, man.
Given that
And
none of us are math majors around here.
no, not one of us. And so the best part about the whole podcast is that we get to listen as leaders and followers, which we'll dive into a little bit more in a moment. But we get to listen to your thoughts, your questions, your comments every week. Those that attend online or in person, they will send in their questions. And of course, if you just happen to be listening, podcast at wholelife.church, or you can send a voicemail or text to 407-965-1607, and we will answer your question to the best of our ability on, well, depending when you send it in, on the next available podcast. How about that? The next available episode. So before we get started, we're talking about leaders and followers this week as we continue on in our work series.
Well, Melanie, is there something? I feel like there's something we forgot.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Getting
we
in
didn't
here.
forget
No,
anything. I don't think so.
Something.
Lucas,
Lucas, was there something that we forgot?
Lucas,
getting
turn
in
their
here?
microphones
I feel
off.
like our host forgot something today.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Turn off their microphones, Lucas.
What day it is today, Randy?
What's today?
Today
It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
It's the blessed day of Randy's birth. Happy birthday, Randy.
Happy birthday.
This is this man's dedication.
Oh,
Some people
man.
would take the day off to cry or to whatever, but Randy is
Yeah.
here with his friends,
That's it.
just hanging out with us, celebrating his birthday.
I mean, where else would he be? Right?
I mean, the great donut fairy put some donuts on my desk this morning when I got in here.
Yeah, Randy and I have a little tradition that on his birthday I leave him some donuts. So I normally when I leave like a dozen from Krispy Kreme, but I went to Parlor Donuts, and those are about 5 times more expensive. So you only got 4 today. So
Well, this is the sign of a great leader.
Yeah.
You have followers, and you must know how to make sure those followers understand the vision. And more high-quality donuts are always welcomed over
Right.
more
yes.
inferior donuts. Yeah.
Which I love Krispy Kreme. So if you're
Well,
out there and you're wanting
yeah.
to sponsor the best
man,
podcast
we just-
on the internet,
It's a sign for Parlor
we'll
Donuts
take
to
you, Krispy
sponsor.
Kreme. We'll never talk about Parlor again. But on the other hand, Parlor, if you're listening, we can be paid in donuts. We're just
We have
actually, I
had-
guess you can't be paid as a nonprofit, but we would
We would accept
underwriting
donations.
in
in donuts.
in donuts. Yes.
Well, and truth be told, there's probably been no more popular donut in staff meetings, birthdays, and other shenanigans around than the Parlor over the last 6 months.
they're really good.
Thank you, Kay. And it's Kay's last day, too.
Calixto,
So,
yeah.
just,
Man, there's
Well, I
a
don't
lot
know if we're
of,
celebrating that, but as much as maybe my birthday, but I think
I think it's safe to say we're not celebrating that as much as
no,
your
'cause I was
birthday.
just gonna say, a little tear.
Maybe
for-
we're not in. Maybe we're mourning that more.
That's kind of what I meant to say,
okay,
because
there we go.
I wasn't trying to celebrate my birthday, so we're trying to keep that on the down low. So
Is this a big number for you, or is it just a regular?
No.
Just
This
a,
is
just
let's
like
see,
a.
1971. Carry the 2 minus a naught. Is a naught. What does that make me? 53?
Yeah, I think that seems
24?
about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, 53. So, whatever. 60s. Well, what did you say, Melanie? It's just all the countdown to death. So what's
Just
the
counting down to
I think that's my saying, Randy. I'll own that one.
what's
You
the
guys-
difference?
Have we already talked about this before about birthdays in heaven? I feel like we covered this, right?
I don't remember birthdays in heaven. I don't.
Oh.
in heaven.
So my
Please.
wife was horrified because my son Eric, many years ago when he was small and easily scarred, came to me and said, "Daddy, will there be birthdays in heaven?"
Oh no!
And what really got Rochelle about it, she was standing there. I said, "No," and And he looks and he goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Because birthdays are just a countdown to when you die, and you're not going to die in heaven, so there's no need
no
for
need for
birthdays."
it.
And to which my wife was horrified, and she's an educator, so she educated me on the proper way to talk to kids.
Just because your theology is correct doesn't mean it's appropriate.
It's just a countdown to death. Why would you need a birthday if you're not, So.
Oh man.
Anyway, so congratulations on 1 year closer to death, Randy. There you go. I mean, there we are.
That's it. And speaking of 1 year closer, this past weekend I was in Wisconsin. Left. It was a quick trip. Left late Friday afternoon, and I was back yesterday early afternoon on Monday. And so I would have to say my favorite leaders, as we were talking about leaders, followers, were my parents. And I just wanted to say congrats on 60 years of showing imperfectly at times, but absolute perfection at others, what it means to lead as examples and to
that's a really great segue.
And achieving something that a lot of people don't. 60
that's a big
years.
deal. That's a lot.
My mom told a story I never heard. And my dad, they're sitting outside by this outdoor fireplace at the place we went to eat and celebrate. And someone noticed a smile on my dad's face. Not that he never smiles, but he's not like, just a big no-reason smiler. And my mom said that someone told her that when she was walking down the aisle with my grandfather arm in arm, and he had his fellas on that side and the girls on the others, and they all looked over and said that they never saw my dad with a bigger smile on his face. So there you go. 60 years later.
That is a great story.
Here they are.
Yeah.
So this is what do we have one more in this series, or was this it?
No, we have one more.
Okay, so there's one more. So this isn't. We didn't end with this because it kind of
the penultimate.
It was the penultimate sermon.
Because it kind of felt like when I was listening to it yesterday and then again this morning, I went to look it up and I couldn't. I don't know. My brain wasn't exactly functioning as maybe it should have. But I couldn't find where was the next sermon. And anyway, I was like, this kind of felt like the end. And I was like, I got to find out early on if this is the end or if this was.
No, this next week we are going to be talking about work as service.
Oh, work as service. Oh, well, that makes sense knowing what's coming up. I got you. Okay. So favorite time you've ever been a follower, and enjoyed it, right?
Favorite time I've been a follower.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed it.
If you think back to something, and I don't know what that would be.
Oh, I got one.
I mean, right now, Randy.
Okay, that's good. Okay, Melanie, that she's done. Ken, you want to go next?
Great answer, Melanie.
Thank
you are getting a gold star for that answer. Yes,
man. I got donuts. You're getting a gold star, but I'll share.
Even if I felt a little insincerity creeping into that.
What?
I know. Who am I to judge? Anyway, so we actually went on a mission trip to Guatemala. And I didn't have to. I wasn't leading it, and actually our trip to Africa as well. It was nice. Like the people who led those trips were amazing, and just had a great time on both those trips because it had good leadership and was able to just kind of sit back. They had it all planned out, and it was just fun to do what they told you to do, and it worked out the right way. And everything was good. I really liked it.
You're not going to believe what story mine was also. We went to the Dominican Republic right after Heather and I got married and went on a mission trip. And even though I was one of the leaders as a job site, on the job site I was a leader. We were laying block, and that was something I knew and had done professionally along with someone else that was on the trip. And we were teaching and all that. But also for the group, like how we did things, when we did things, we were working within a set of rules we didn't really like, and we weren't really sure what those were. And it was actually pretty cool. It was kind of a fun way to learn how to follow while you were also leading. It was kind of a first in that one for me.
That's called middle management, I think.
Yeah, it paid about what middle management makes. So I think that could have been it. Lucas?
I think for me was for ADRA, I went on a mission trip to Uruguay. And we were building school for kids, and it was my first experience, like really following someone to do something good. Great, I mean.
Great, even. Yeah. All right. And what did you say before, Melanie?
I said right.
Oh, yeah, you're right here. Yeah.
Yeah. Good answer.
Now it does. Now it does feel a little more insincere, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. The more you say it,
Yeah. Okay.
I'll say the other, like some of my favorite
I'm
work
sincere.
Whatever. We're gonna hook you up to a lie detector after this, and we'll find out whether that's true or not. Anyway, so two of my favorite work experiences where I was not a leader was working in news. I had my first boss was Mana Silva, and she was an amazing leader. Really, really helped me learn broadcast news, and it was fantastic. And then went into television news. That was radio news, and then went into television news. And my boss there was Sabrina Salas Montanani, and just a fantastic. Both of them really good leaders, super good leaders, and got the most out of their teams, and had our backs. Anyway, yeah, they were great leaders. Really enjoyed following them.
So we started off the message and kind of the basis for everything, or the foundation in Matthew, where Jesus says, "Go and make disciples." And you said Jesus gives you, commands to make the disciples. So you have this leadership component, but also that you have to follow. So you're kind of both. And I wasn't expecting. I guess I've never looked at it that way before. So I wasn't expecting when you were reading the text, and it comes up on screen, and I'm looking at it, and then you're like, well, it's both. And I was like, okay, now I don't know. I kind of thought I had an idea where I wanted to go with this, and then I was like, well, geez, that just threw a monkey wrench into everything, because now we have to think. And so I thought, okay, well, where's the time I've followed, or when was the right time or the best time to be a leader? And when you think about the people that, like all the situations we just talked about, it was because if you have the right leader with the right vision, following is easy. Following is fun. I mean, that's why Melanie said Ken. That's why we said the people we said. And I think that great leaders and great followers maybe co-lead as they collaborate for the best.
Well, and I mean, one of the things that we could say is almost all of us are constantly toggling between leadership and followership. Melanie says she likes working here, but she would be leading a lot of different things that happen around here. She has to guide the vision of where our worship services are going. And do I have a little bit of input into it? I do, but really, one of the things I expect out of the people who are who report to me is that they're all leaders. They have to be able to vision. They have to be. I've just discovered it's so much better if you get people who are really smart in the areas that they do. You let them vision with a bigger. You put out a big picture and then let them vision what that looks like, and it goes a lot better. But Lucas, I don't think you have anybody that reports to you right now, right? Here at the church.
Not yet.
You report. Not yet. See, I love that. I love that. There you go. That's exactly correct. Not yet. Yes. Not yet. And yet, I'm going to tell you that I would guess that there are parts of Lucas' day that he's toggling between following Randy and leading
Absolutely.
other things that are happening here in the church. We have volunteers that you would actually be working with. And then there's your home life. There's different things that you lead at perhaps in the community. And so all of us have this little on and off toggle that I think that we do. And as the funny thing was this sermon, I've been wanting to write a book. I've been wanting to write a book, and I have not. I've gone through all these different ideas of different things, and I just haven't settled on anything that felt right. So here's my accountability from all of podcast land and from those of you in this room. This is the one I actually feel passionate about. I want to write a book on following because, like I said at the very beginning of my sermon, if I point at you and say you're a follower, most of us don't feel particularly complimented by that, and yet, can we just for a minute think about how important it is to have followers, and not just in the social media context, but if you cannot lead unless there are people following you. And so being a good follower, in my opinion, is more important than being a good leader.
Oh, sorry. I breathed.
Yes, you did. I wasn't sure whether you were sighing or you were wanting to get into the conversation there.
We started reaching for the mic to adjust it. I thought, oh, here she comes.
Yes.
Oh, well, I may as well say something then. I think being a follower, you have to adjust what being a good follower is based on who the leader is. And I think there's a really big difference between leader and person in charge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so sometimes people are put in a leadership position and they're not really good leaders. And I think in support of a vision, to be a good follower, there's an aspect of leading from behind, not in a subversive way where you're tearing the leader down or you're sort of showing off your skills, but asking the right questions, providing support, thinking ahead in areas where the leader hasn't necessarily, thought something all the way through.
Right.
And then offering those pieces that help support the vision for the leader. Maybe it's leadership and followership, but I think that's part of being a good follower also.
Absolutely. There's a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge that I have skimmed parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I have friends who have read it and told me it's fantastic. It was written by Clay Scroggins, who basically he worked underneath Andy Stanley, who, for those of you who may not be familiar with Andy Stanley, is kind of a big name in pastoral circles. Has a church, mega churches in the Atlanta area, and Clay came in and basically took over, but Andy was still there, and so Clay wrote a book on how to lead when you're not in charge. And to Melanie's point, this is what the book is basically about: is how do you do that? And to the further expand what Melanie was saying, most leaders need their followers to expand their vision. Nobody can completely think out a big vision. There's aspects of it that you have to get input, that you need other people to refine, to say, well, that will work, well, that won't work, or have you thought this through? One of the leadership positions I was in that I felt the most effective, I had a number two who was very respectful but always disagreed with me every time, every decision. It was like, well, that's not going to work, and that person was wrong. But because that person they were right occasionally, more times than not, it would work. But the reason it would not have worked in the way that I put it, that person forced me to think it through, and make adjustments and make changes that did make it successful. And so it was actually a real blessing to have that person saying, no, that's not going to work, because it forced me to slow down, work through the problem, make sure that when I rolled it out, the things that they were concerned about, the problems they saw, had been addressed. And so it was a really great relationship, because I don't think that person was particularly visionary, but they were very good at taking a vision and being like, well, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem, and this isn't going to work, this isn't, and helping. Because I'm the opposite. I haven't met an idea I didn't love. I'm like, let's run, let's do this. This is great. Let's go. We can do this. It'll work.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it will. And so it's really kind of handy to have that person for me behind me who's more realistic or maybe even pessimistic to a certain extent. And so there's all kinds of ways to follow that also, again, toggles into the leadership, where you're casting a vision for the leader. And then you're toggling back to, well, the leader agrees or doesn't agree, and then you're supporting and making sure that if at all possible, that vision, that idea works in the long run.
Well, isn't that a characteristic of a good leader? I read somewhere one time, a long time ago. Long time
Have you been
ago.
in Melanie's office? Yeah. There's a lot of books in there.
There's a couple.
There are books. That good leaders surround themselves with people whose strengths are the leader's weaknesses.
Yeah.
In other words, you assemble the team that's going to be as strong as possible because you know your own strengths and weaknesses, and then you bring in people who have strengths in the area that you need more assistance.
How many great leaders do we have? Because it seems like if you go to when we were in New York, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago, we went to this little bookstore for my 4th book that I own, and we as we walked through the store, it was like, and I think this is true of most bookstores. It was, you have your fiction and you have, your travel, you have all these different categories, and then when you get to self-help or leadership, it's like floor to ceiling for half the bookstore. So either we really stink at it and everyone has an idea of how to fix it and how to be the great leader, or we're just full of great leaders because everybody has read all these books. I'm not sure which one.
Leadership, I don't want to undersell leadership. It's super important.
Yeah.
I really do believe that organizations, churches, rise and fall with the quality of leadership that they have. And to Melanie's point, one of the things that I've had to grapple with in my life is, as a leader, you're often made to feel like you need to be the smartest person in the room, that you need to have the answers. You need to be able to figure things out. And the further I go, the more I don't believe that at all. I think that you do not. In fact, if you're the smartest person in the room, you probably haven't done a good job of putting the right team in place, because there should be. I always look at it as, I think the best leaders are the ones that kind of have a general idea of a lot of different things, but they might not be the master of any of those things. Going back to summer camp, when I was leading there, I knew nothing about horses, knew nothing about archery when I began, and I realized as I went, I need to learn. I don't have to be the expert on it, but I need to know what my horsemanship staff are talking about when they say they need to bring a farrier in. I need to understand that that's not a raft that's going to float across the lake, right? And so I need to understand my kitchen staff, what safe serve is, and what's going on there. And again, I don't have to know how to make all the meals, but I do need to understand enough of it. And that means spending time. So I think great leadership finds people that are really smart in the areas that are way smarter than you are. And that's the way I would look at it here at Whole Life. I think that Melanie is way smarter than I am when it comes to worship, putting together that worship service. I think she understands homiletics in strong ways that I'm learning a lot from.
What is homiletics, by the way?
That would be preaching.
Oh.
Yeah. She does have a PhD in it.
If you don't know what the word means, you probably, I feel better now, though.
And then, I think Randy, you and Lucas, that there's zero doubt in my mind you guys are better. I couldn't do a podcast. I need to understand a little bit about it. And then the other communication things that happen, the graphics, the marketing, some of the stuff. I mean, and
that's why Lucas is here.
We ask a lot out of the two of you. Normally in a reasonable sized organization, your marketing is going to be very, very separate from the rest of your communications, like your public relations. They're different things. They have different functions. Here, we're small, so you guys get to do a bunch of stuff. And
it's kind of fun, though.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on who you are. Sometimes,
that's true.
Some people would not enjoy that. But my point is, for me, I think you always want to find people that are super smart, and I think the greatest leaders are the ones that are not intimidated by people who are smarter than them. They roll with it. And again, for me, like I hate saying it, but it's one of the things I've had to work on, because I kind of want to be the smartest person in the room, and so it's one of the things I'm having to work on in my life and say, hey, no, that's. But one of the things I learned probably 10 or 15 years ago was I really want to surround myself with really top shelf people, and it makes going to work a lot more fun, and you get a lot more accomplished when you have that type of person around you.
Who was it that said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room?
Yeah, I don't know who said that, but it's a good saying.
I'm usually in the closet when I feel that way. Oh my God, it's not a very big room, and I'm not even sure how to get out of here. But some people have great ideas and even visions for things. Like, man, I'm a great idea person, but maybe I'm not sure if it's a lack of personality, or maybe, I don't know, charisma is the right word. But like, they don't find the followers. Maybe they're good at that, but like finding followers that are like, hey, I'll catch on to that vision. So how does somebody improve their leadership skills if no one has invested that in them, where you know what you know and you think this is leading, and maybe it's an maybe it's a little more antiquated idea of leading where like you're the person in charge, not necessarily thinking of the rest of it. I've led people before, but that was more of I was just in charge because someone hired me to be in charge and tell everybody what to do. And there was no really thought, at least by me, there was no really thought of, just be fair and honest. I mean, which those are not, it's not bad, but there wasn't as much thought of like, I can see why Melanie, as we gave her the business earlier about saying she likes working here, but it's true. We've been empowered to do things and to lead our ministries, but also not blindly. Like, hey, would you could you benefit from talking to someone like a coach that can coach you and can help you be better at all of this? And it's like, whoa, now we're thinking of things we've never thought of before, but. What if you're at a job where you have ideas and you want to be at least a good follower, but maybe you don't have the tools? I mean, I know there's books and rows and bookstores full of that, but how do you get started?
In my opinion, the way to get started, if you're wanting to work into leadership, is be the best follower that you can be. Because, like I said, we all, even when we're in following roles, have to toggle in between. And it's interesting to me how much I wanted to start off as the Michael Jordan of leadership as opposed to start off, playing elementary school basketball and just learning the fundamentals of dribbling and two-handed passes and the simple
you started
layup.
all the way down there. I thought you were going to say I was going to start as Scottie Pippen.
Oh yeah, no.
But no, you were going to go.
I was going way back.
Okay,
way back.
Okay.
And I think that happens a lot of times. A lot of times, people want to start off as a superstar leader that has a lot of people following them. And the fact of the matter, maybe there's a few, that's rarely something that ever happens. Leadership is like any other skill. It takes time to develop, and it takes practice. And the practice is by being a follower. I've learned as much from the bad leaders that I've had to follow in life as I've learned from
true.
I remember having one colleague who had worked under a leader that they didn't particularly care for, who said, when I'm leading, I always think, what would this person do? And then I do the opposite. And
wow.
And that's a little strong.
That's a little harsh,
but every leader that I've worked under, I have learned something that I want to do, even the bad ones, and I've learned things that I don't want to do, even the good ones. I'm like, you're a great leader. You'd be this much better if you didn't do that. And I know that's true for me. There's things I do really well, and there's things that, man, don't imitate that. Try to do something different. And so when it comes to being a great leader, I think start off being a follower, and every follower generally has, like I said, Lucas right now doesn't have anybody who's directly reporting to him on our staff, but there's volunteers. And if let's go ahead and say in that situation, if Lucas is wanting to develop as a leader, the way for him to do is to create teams of volunteers that are working under him. And when people don't follow, when you're trying to put out that vision and nobody's behind you, you have to go and evaluate why that is. Was my communication not effective?
Yeah.
Was my vision not the right vision for the idea? Did everybody look and go, yeah, no, I know Lucas is smart, but he's probably not building the rocket that's going to go to Mars. That's probably not, that's probably not.
I'm not planning to do that
No,
anytime soon.
So yeah. So the point is, if you put out a vision that's completely unrealistic, people aren't going to get behind that. And by the way, some of the great leaders put out visions that people don't get behind. They're like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I don't believe in that. Now, the truly great ones are able to see things. You take, as much as it pains me to say it, Steve Jobs, take him. I mean, one of his things was that he saw things that none of us, 20 years ago, the idea of walking around with a phone in your pocket that could do everything that it does, I think he saw that. But the rest of us were like, you can't. How would you do that? And so the great are able to do that, but then they're able to lead to making that happen. But practice. And my other favorite that Dave Livermore, one of my mentors, told me, he said leaders are readers. If you want to be a leader, you need to read. And a lot of times, I think the reason people are not able to get other people behind them has a lot to do with their communication. It has a lot to do with the way that they go about trying to get people, shaming, manipulation, the way that you speak to people. And I'm just speaking from personal experience here. These are all things that you have to work on.
Yeah.
You have to be able to be open to seeing where your flaws are. And I know that there are those in leadership circles that may argue with me on this, but I think that I'd also say those are people you probably wouldn't want to follow if you stop and think it. The people who say, "Oh, never admit that you're wrong. Never admit that." If you've ever worked for a leader like that, it's miserable.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely miserable. I will work all day long for a leader who makes mistakes but's willing to own them.
Yeah. Following
All day long. Not just falling on you, just being like, "Hey, that was a mistake. I'm sorry. I messed up. That wasn't right. I'm sorry for talking to you that way. Whatever."
Yeah.
We all make mistakes, but we all like to work for people who are willing to own them and do that. And a lot of that gets learned again in the little leagues, where you start off small. And by the way, congratulations, Lake Mary. Little League world champions.
What?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Nice.
Lake Mary Little League team. I don't know if any of you are listening out there, but man, congratulations to you. That's a big accomplishment. I know that.
They take that. I mean, Little
They
League.
played against Taipei. I can't remember the final score. It was like 3-1 or something like that.
Wow.
But it was. I happened to be in a store that was broadcasting it, and I sat and watched for a couple minutes, and they were down 1-0 for a couple innings. So they came back, and what grit! But anyway,
Rally.
But you start off. My point being, you start off in the little leagues. You don't go straight, and as good as those kids are, they're not going to go play for the Yankees or the Boston Red Sox or whatever. Even the worst team in the league, which I don't know who that is right now, but they're not going to go straight from little league to doing. They're going to have to play more. They're going to have to grow in experience. And again, you do that by practice, by repetition, by reading, by watching video back. There's a lot of different things that go into being a great leader and a great follower. Great followers analyze what they're doing. They think about that sort of thing. And one of the things I don't want to get lost in this podcast, and when I was thinking about being a follower, is the point that I really made about knowing who to follow and when to say no.
Well, that was our next the next go-to, because I feel like that maybe that was the most important part, because you listed the attributes of followers and leaders. You got to know their values, the humility, hard work, excellent communication, confidence, and my favorite was integrity. In a world of, I have air quotes here, influencers on social media and different things, who are you following? And the advice, whether it's something small or something great, do you know that person well enough to know that I'm a real follower? Like you might be an influencer, but are you someone enough of is an influencer a leader?
I try not to judge too much, but I tell you what, a lot of the influencers that you see on social media don't feel particularly honest. It doesn't feel authentic. A lot of times to me. And that's, again, I think I in researching the sermon, there was a point where I was looking at running down that road of influencers and social media, because, if leadership is influence, according to John Maxwell, then all these influencers are leaders, right? And I would argue that they're not, that there's a big difference. A lot of them are pushing a product or products. Sometimes they're the product. And I don't know that that's necessarily leadership. It's something different. And but according, I think it was in 2019, they did a study, and I think being an influencer was the number 3 or 4 choice for teens of what they want to be when they go into their professional work life. And it's easy to. Some of us who are a little older may be a little bit judgmental of it, but there's a lot of us growing up that wanted to become a movie star or do something that was out public facing like that. So I don't begrudge that that's something that you want to do. I would just say if that is something you want to do, really say what it means to be a leader, what it really means to be an influencer, and what it means to make the world a better place, to bring order out of chaos instead of creating chaos. Because sometimes that's one of the things that you really see with some of the influencers is that they create chaos, and that's kind of their brand. And I would just think from a Christian viewpoint, if you're a Christian, that's not legitimate.
Yeah.
To be creating chaos.
Well, it almost, I thought the point that maybe brought it all home, maybe as good as anything that you said, was the story of Adolf Eichmann, who was just like, we've all heard the devil made me do it. And he was like, no, the leadership made me do it. Yeah. I was just following the rules. I mean, I wasn't the one that made the rules. I didn't disseminate the rules. I just followed them. So in my estimation, hands are clean here.
If you read the entire letter, which I only used a very small portion of it, but it's a handwritten letter that he sent to the Israeli prime minister. He'd been condemned to be hanged, and he was appealing that sentence, and he wrote this handwritten 1.5-page letter to the Israeli prime minister, and it's a fascinating letter to read the whole way through. If you have a chance, find an English translation of it, unless you speak German, in which case then read it that way. But but it's a fascinating letter because it's this genuine. I know what I did was bad, and I told my leadership that it was bad and that I didn't want to do it, and they told me to do it anyway. So I was just being the best follower that I could be and following through. And if I hadn't, I might have been killed. My family there would have been repercussions for my family. He makes that whole argument, and you can, if you've ever been in a position working with somebody who asked you to do something illegal or unethical, which unfortunately I have been in that position, it's a difficult thing to say no because you feel the weight of providing for your family. You think about what will happen if you get fired and what. It's not like the person who fires you going to say, "Oh, I asked them to do something illegal or unethical." They're gonna say, "Oh, they were lazy or they didn't. They're insubordinate or blah blah blah." And in Eichmann's case, there are firing squads. He was pretty well aware of the death camps that people were being sent because he was doing that. So the consequences were very real for him. And I think that one of the things that as parents, we owe it to ourselves is to raise children who know how to fundamentally understand what is right and wrong and be willing to take the consequences. I hear all the time, and it really bugs me, people who want to take a moral stand on something and then they get upset when the consequence comes along.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that unjust consequences are nothing that you shouldn't be upset, but I guess what gets to me is kind of the surprise. Like, one of the things for me, when I was looking for a job very desperately after one job came to end and there was nothing else, and I was looking for a job and I was so desperate for a job, but one of my core things for me is I don't want to work on Sabbath. I don't want to work from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. That's a core thing for me. And it was one of my lines, and I'm not here to judge anybody else's decisions on this, but what I am saying is for me, it was a core thing. And I went to employers and told them straight up, hey, this is who I am. And I know for a fact I didn't get jobs because with some of the different places because I said that. That's a consequence. Is I can be like, oh, you need to be more tolerant. You need to be more understand my religious liberties and this, that, and another. Well, you know what? There's some businesses that they work 24 days a week or 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they need you available, and that's what they're going to do. That's not their fault. That's their choice, and I'm making a choice too. And so I think that we have to be able to raise kids that understand it as a follower. There are consequences. Like there aren't always happy endings for doing the right thing, but doing the right thing is the payoff in all of this. And teaching kids how to think critically and how to say, this is not a good person to be followed. They don't align with my values. They don't, and I'm willing to go ahead, if I happen to follow somebody and not realize how bad it is, I'm willing to accept the consequence of that. So important for us as adults, so important for us to know where those boundaries are and to say no. I mean, I think it would have been incredibly hard for Adolf Eichmann to say no, but he should have. And
Sure.
And he sent 1.5 million people to death camps. And he needed to take responsibility that he did that it wasn't just some leader over top of him telling him to do something. He had agency, and he had the ability to say no. Yeah. No with consequences, but no, I'm not going to do that to another human being. I'm not going to be a part of that.
And I don't think it always has to be. It's weird that, not weird, but it's coincidence. You mentioned that story, and we just had this conversation when I was home this weekend. My dad had told me a story that I'd never heard him tell before. After he worked in the same place 45 years, and he was just looking for a part-time here or there. So he went into the job and said, "Well, I'm not available Friday night, Saturday," and they were like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And then it was like, well, I'm not, like, well, see you Friday afternoon, see you tomorrow. He's like, well, you have to find somebody else because I won't be here. And he didn't get fired. They were mad, but because he didn't show up like he said he wasn't going to show up, and they got fired. So we had this conversation. I had the same thing. I wasn't practicing as an Adventist or a Christian or anything else, but I was still like, look, I don't work on Saturdays. And I got hired. I was in a leadership position. I was managing a whole department. And then they called me, and they agreed. It was in writing, and they agreed. And Friday, they're like, all right, see you tomorrow. I was like, no, what's this all about? And I was just like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And so I quit. And I didn't have a job for quite a while after that one, but it was fine. I mean, but the consequences. So sometimes they are surprising. Because it's like, look, we had this all figured out.
Well, what I would say to you is, in your particular case, you actually are protected. If you put it in writing with somebody, employers have the right up front to say, hey, if you can't do this, we can't hire you. But once they've hired you, if you've been straightforward with them, and especially if you have it in writing, there are legal protections for you in place. So.
Yeah, there wasn't. Yeah. They said it wasn't as my lawyer said it wasn't as clear as could possibly be, okay. But it was agreed upon either way. As we start to wrap everything up, first off, Rod asks, "Can you be a leader to someone who does not share your values?"
Oh, what a great question!
So is that like, do those have to go hand in hand?
What do you think, Melanie?
I think yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that.
Can you be a leader to somebody who doesn't share you? I think, wow, that's such a good question. I think it's surprising who you can be a leader to. There are people that I don't share values with, or I wonder though, I mean, usually there's some sub-value.
Are we talking values versus vision?
Yeah.
I think values.
Are those so intertwined? I mean, can you pursue a vision with someone who maybe doesn't share your values?
If you believe in the vision, I think that makes it easier.
But if your values are the ones that can list it off, if it's humility, hard work, excellent communication, confidence, and integrity, I mean, if you don't share those values, I think that's pretty difficult to lead someone who doesn't have integrity. Confidence, maybe you can build. You can work on communication, but if that person is not humble,
maybe brings up
hard work.
Maybe that brings up an interesting aspect of leadership, is the educational part of it that we didn't touch on at all in the sermon, but that sometimes part of leadership is that vision is actually helping other people learn and grow in what they need to see. Maybe you take somebody who hard work isn't one of their values. I had a couple of those at summer camp that came on. They wanted to have a fun summer, and they quickly realized that there's a lot of fun in the summer, but that's the hard work probably is the bigger part of the summer.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of teach it. And I think one of my favorite things about running a summer camp, really one of my favorite things, was watching the growth that you would see from young people who would come in, maybe some of them never really even having had a serious job before, and then watching them develop and grow. And they didn't know that they had those values, but they come in. Because at Indian Creek Camp, one of the things that we started off the summer is, here's our values: God, integrity, safety, hard work, and fun. God, integrity, safety. And we said it so many times they get so sick of it, because every day, multiple times during the day, as a staff, what are our values? We are family. God, integrity, safety, hard work, and fun. Those are our values as a family. And it was amazing to me how many of those people who came in without those values left with those values. That they started seeing that they're important. So I think that you can lead people who have different values than you do, but generally that means that somebody's going to have to adjust, that they're going to have to change the expectation, that they're going to have to change a little bit. So I don't know. Roundabout, good question, Rod.
Yeah, and I think one of the important characteristics of a leader is to detect the potential as well.
Yeah.
So maybe we even read this in the book, that the unreasonable hospitality, that oftentimes the right person for a job is a person that is not ready yet for that position.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to pay attention to the potential that a person has to accomplish something.
Agreed.
Nice.
Yeah, that's great. Great.
Well, early morning, I did promise that I would read my email during the show, and I did. And we have an email from an anonymous question sent to podcast@wholelife.church. It says, you cited an example of a follower of Hitler blaming the one he followed and taking no responsibility for the tragic consequences. How does who we follow politically today speak about us as a follower of integrity? That one's not loaded. Good job, whoever anonymous
I see
you
why
are.
that was anonymous. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good question. I think the first part to understand is that there are no perfect leaders. So let's go ahead and just put that out there, especially in politics. But I think number two, I think it pays to be very, very thoughtful about the people that you're supporting, particularly if you're going to be verbal, if you're going to communicate that support for that person or party or whatever. It's important to think through those values, to really think about, is this what I really want to be promoting in the world? And it's one of the reasons why I had a sermon several weeks ago that talked about we're Christians first, and party politics is a very distant something else.
Something else, yeah.
And
I like that.
So, I remember having a friend who told me, we were talking about a certain pastor that they really admired, and I said, well, people are fallible and they make mistakes. It would just shake my faith if this person messed up or left the faith. And I was like, well, I'm worried for you, because people will do that.
Totally possible.
Out of the mentors that I had when I was a teenager, the pastors who are mentors, as far as I know, neither one of them are Seventh-day Adventists anymore. I don't know what their walk with Jesus is. I've tried to connect here and there, and they're not particularly overly interested. And if my faith were in them, or if I were promoting them as a person, then I would that wouldn't be particularly helpful. And so when it comes to party politics, when it comes to the presidential candidates, your local candidates running for all the different offices, be thoughtful about what they're saying. Ask yourself how they align with the values you have as Christians. And like I said, I think it's probably pretty hard to find a single person who perfectly aligns with all the things I think are important and the things I think aren't important. But be very thoughtful about it, and also be really aware that sometimes the person that you're supporting can really cause you to be put into a box by people who will identify their policies with you as a person,
Yep.
as opposed to you being more nuanced. and so I think we have to be very thoughtful about this. And I think it is sobering to think how many Christians followed Hitler.
Yeah.
And how many Christians did not call out what he was doing, because Hitler clothed a lot of what he did in Christianity.
Yeah.
And even though I would argue that Hitler didn't really view himself as a Christian.
Yeah.
But so it's one of those things I think you need to be very thoughtful about and ask yourself. That's one of the things I think about is what will my grandkids think about this topic? And I don't want to be the person who's on the wrong side of the civil rights movement. I don't want to be the person who's defending slavery in the 1800s and I don't want to be that person. And we have issues today that we have to think through and think, what does God think about that? And what is the loving thing? Not a mamby-pamby kind of love, but 1 Corinthians 13, which has some boundaries to it, that has heft to it. What is the loving thing to do? And what do I do when I have a politician that I agree with 80% of what of their policies, but there's 20% that are just reprehensible?
Sometimes those 20, that's the one, reprehensible. The 20 are big.
Yeah, it's not small stuff. And and for those of you who are like saying, quit dancing around this, Ken, just say it. I'm not going to, because you need to think for yourself.
Yeah.
Think for yourself, make your own decisions. And I'm not, again, one of the things I know is I haven't been called to be a supporter of a party. I've been called to be the hype person for Jesus. I'm here to point people towards Jesus, and that's what's very important. And part of that, though, is standing up for those who need standing up for injustice.
Well, as we begin to close out, thank you, Anonymous, again for that question. And you guys can send anything, podcast at wholelife.church, 407-965-1607, and we will cover them on the show. I just want to say a big shout out to Bernie Champagne. I know I didn't get to see that part of the program yet, but I know that happened this weekend. And
it's a big deal. It's hundreds of hours of work went into
Master Guide, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. And Bernie's a big piece of our overall kids ministries here at Whole Life.
Yeah.
So
for those of you who don't know what it is, you can just Google it. But it's a really big deal. It involves a lot of hours of work.
Yeah.
Learning, research, writing. So we're super proud of you, Bernie.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next week we already said we're gonna wrap this one up next week, and then what upcoming? Oh, wait a minute, that's a great question, right?
So after that, we have a one-off, which
Okay.
is on rest. So play, work, rest. And then, which maybe I should have done a whole series, because you could do a whole series on that. But but then, and maybe we will another time. But after that, we will be doing the Great Question series.
And the Great Question. Do we have any openings left, or are those all taken? Do we know?
I don't know.
And Melanie,
that's a Melanie question.
And Melanie had to just step out for a moment, so we don't know for sure. So stay tuned. We'll find out more about that. Anything else? I think that's it.
Living room session.
That is coming up this
Saturday
week.
night. Yeah.
So if you listen to this on the 28th or 9th, 30th
31st
of 2024.
of 2024, that's right after that.
If you're listening to this in 2027,
if it's 2027, go to YouTube. It'll still be here, and you can just search the Living Room Sessions at Whole Life Church. And I think we're going to
start. What time does that start at? Is it 6:30?
6:30.
6:30, and I don't know if we're streaming it yet, but I think we are definitely going to post it, so you would be able to find it on our YouTube.
That's
So,
awesome.
even if you aren't able If you're aren't able to be here, woof. If you are
It
not
is Labor
able-
Day weekend, but
Yeah, there you go.
living room session is one of those ones that you can watch it online, but being there in person,
That's the whole
you
the whole thing.
don't want to miss it.
That's the whole jam.
Yeah, it is. It's really one of those ones that it'll be such a good use of your time.
Bring your beanbag chair
Yeah.
and hang out. That's all I'm saying.
That's it.
That's it. All right, guys. As always, thanks for listening, sharing, and sending the love. And have a great week.